The last couple of years has been unreal. It's been unreal. We've seen food shortages, gas shortages. We've seen $6, $7, $8 per gallon gas, $9 a gallon for gas, $9 a gallon for fuel. We're approaching a situation where we could potentially run out of diesel fuel here in the United States, and things are continuing to get worse. And there's a lot of things that we've been seeing in the last couple of years. Some people say it's biblical. I don't really know if it is or not. I'm not trying to get into that. But what we are seeing is evolution. We're seeing inflation at a rate that we've never seen before. The value of the US dollar is, in the short term, has been appreciating. It's actually been climbing against other currencies. The US dollar has been climbing against the euro. In fact, the US dollar has actually climbed above the value of the euro for the first time in the last, 15 to 20 years? Now, I'm not trying to give you a history on currency, but the fact of the matter is that out of all the currencies, the US dollar right now is among the strongest. But this doesn't mean that we're safe. This does not at all mean that we're safe. It's all a facade. It's fiat currency. And the Fed has been printing money, what they call quantitative easing, printing money. They have been at 0% interest rates for long, extended periods of time. And granted, the Fed lowered interest rates previously. Obviously, they've been raising interest rates for the last 6 to 9 months. But up to this point, the Fed has been on this frenzy of printing money. And we have seen the likes of Amazon just bursting at the seams in terms of growth. We've seen Tesla going from $50 a share to $600, $700 a share. We're seeing cryptocurrency making leaps and bounds from, I remember when Bitcoin, you could buy Bitcoin for like $100. And I remember at the time, it was like, why would you want to buy Bitcoin? You can't see it, you can't touch it. And then Bitcoin ran all the way up to $67,000 per coin. Now it's down to somewhere around $20,000 a coin. Gold, silver, these are tangible assets. A lot of people ask me, why don't you invest in gold? Why don't you promote gold? Why don't you promote silver? Now, most people don't know really what I invest in. So it's kind of hard to say if I'm not already invested in those things. So, but here's the thing. We're seeing a number of different companies. We're seeing layoffs from the likes of Walmart. We're seeing store closures, guys. We're seeing layoffs from the likes of Walmart, from the likes of Redfin. We're seeing layoffs across the board from multitudes of tech companies. We've seen Elon Musk. He recently purchased Twitter. Unless you've been living under a rock, you probably already knew that. But Elon Musk purchased Twitter, and it's been reported that he's looking to lay off 75% of the workforce. So a lot of people are being upended right now. I don't know if you've ever read that book, Who Moved My Cheese, but I got to hand it to you guys. Cheese is getting moved all over the place. And if you and your family are not prepared, you may not be able to survive this one. And I'm anticipating that this is going to be among one of the greatest wealth transfers in recent human history. And the funny thing about this is, if you guys remember when the whole pandemic first started and everyone started rushing out to prepare. This is the first time this is probably the first time anyone who lives in a modern modern society here in the United States ever had to even think about preparing, because everything was always at the store. You can go to Walmart, Costco, Target, any time of the day. Well, as long as you're open, as long as they're during store hours, you could pretty much go there any time of day and grab whatever you needed. There was no mask requirements. There were no early store closures. There were no social distancing, but it all became a thing very rapidly. Within the first quarter of 2020. And that was a game-changing moment. I mean, people ran out of toilet paper. People were unprepared. Families were like, how am I going to wipe? Right. And it's so funny because while families were struggling to wipe during the year 2020, today families are struggling not to get wiped out. And it's just crazy the direction that our economy is headed. It's crazy the direction that families are headed. And so the question is, are you at risk? And if you are at risk, what are you going to do to survive? More importantly, right? Do you work for Walmart? Do you work for Wells Fargo? I know one's retail, one's banking. But if you guys are seeing the pattern, the writing is on the wall, right? So Walmart's laying people off. Walmart is closing stores. Take a look at Kevin's videos. He's identified a long list of stores that are closing, including Walmart. Dollar Trees have been closing, have been shutting down. It might be Dollar General. They're all the same to me. Dollar something is in the title. Dollar Tree, Dollar Store, Dollar General. Everything's a dollar, Family Dollar. Times are changing, guys. You're seeing automation take jobs away from the average American. And we're seeing the rate at which evolution is taking place pick up. The rate of evolution is accelerating. And a lot of families aren't prepared. So, I'm not trying to put fear in anyone. This is not a fear-based video. In fact, this video should be very helpful, right? So, regardless of what gas prices do, regardless of what our diesel fuel supplies look like, regardless of what the labor market does, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do? How am I going to survive? What is my family's plan for survival in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? And you need to start taking action, folks, because things aren't going to get they're not going to get any easier. The Federal Reserve has issued warnings, and the Federal Reserve was actually issuing warnings long ago. It's only recently that people have been paying more attention, or I should say more people have been paying attention. I mean, you got channels like Jeremiah Babe, you've got channels like Economic Ninja. They're bringing you guys the information that is not normally seen or heard in the mass media. They're not talking about this. They're not looking out for people. They're not looking out for the average common man. But the interesting thing is it all boils down to what we learned in school, right? So who's going to survive this thing? Well, who is best prepared? And I'm not talking about just stocking your pantries. I'm not just talking about who's got the most generator fuel for emergency backup generator power and whatnot. No, it goes way beyond that. It goes way beyond stockpiling water and water filtration. It goes much, much further beyond that, folks. You got to ask yourself, there's, as Kevin likes to say, these are parts of a whole, right? So food and power, stockpiling food, stockpiling fuel for your generators to ensure that you have continuous power. These are only a couple of the segments here, right? And there's so much more. I mean, if you can't afford to pay the property taxes on the home that you live in, even if your house is paid off, which most people it isn't, your house is going to be taken away by the state, local government, right? So you have to make sure that you are also securing your income. And if we remember back in school, we were taught that organisms and different species survive as a result of adaptation or the ability to adapt, right? And so right now, modern civilization is being forced to adapt. And so what do I mean by that? I mean, think about it. If we look at it historically, who got wiped out? It was the the organisms, it was the species that could not adapt to the evolution of the world. And what are we seeing right now? We're seeing self-checkout in Walmart removing or eliminating the original positions of the human to human interaction with a cashier. Cashier positions are being eliminated at the banks. Teller positions are being eliminated. Now, this is not news to anyone, but a lot of people aren't paying attention to what's happening. My wife went to the Dollar Tree the other day, or the dollar store, or whatever it is, and she was telling me that they have self-checkout. I've never seen self-checkout before at the Dollar Tree or at the dollar store, right? And so this means that more and more of these stores are catching wind of this self-checkout. And why are they doing this? Well, they understand that, with the economy the way it is, inflation the way it is, with the oncoming recession, and whether or not we're headed into a recession or not, whether or not it becomes a depression or not, that is besides the point. The point is that they realize that the employee overhead continues to rise. Minimum wage continues to increase, right? And this is partially to do with inflation. And this is also partially to do with government mandates forcing employers to raise their minimum wage. And what happens when employers are forced to raise their minimum wage? Well, number one, they have to raise the prices of the goods that they sell. Number two, if they can, or number two, they have to let people go. They're forced to do layoffs. And a lot of people are looking at minimum wage like, yay, they're going to raise the minimum wage. Well, if a lot of people don't realize this cycle here. Minimum wage increases, prices of products increase. And it could be both, and it usually is both, jobs are lost. So fewer people are making more money because the goal of the company is to remain profitable. These businesses, small businesses, Fortune 500 companies, S&P 500 companies that are listed on the NASDAQ, publicly traded companies, the goal is to be profitable. And so if your labor costs increase, then you have to do one of two things. Same thing what we do with budgeting. Number one, you have to reduce your cost, or number two, you have to increase your income. And this is where it gets really interesting. Americans, people, this is evolution. So businesses are evolving or they're becoming extinct, right? You guys remember Hummer. You guys remember Saturn. You guys remember Kodak, Blockbuster, all these different companies that were huge companies making billions and billions of dollars, publicly traded companies on, S&P 500, Dow Jones, NASDAQ, you name it. Look, you guys remember Nokia, right? They used to be a top cell phone provider. But then you had companies like Apple redefining the industry. Like BlackBerry, they didn't evolve. They're not even relevant anymore. The last time you heard BlackBerry on a regular basis was probably back in like the year 2000, 2002, 2005. I mean, like maybe as late as 2010. I'll give them that. The fact of the matter is that they didn't evolve, and they're not where they used to be. Look at Apple. Apple's releasing the iPhone 14. They're constantly innovating. Now, I'm not trying to get into that because most of the iPhones is, for me, I can't really tell the difference between them. But the fact of the matter is that they're innovating enough to keep their audience interested in the product. And they're certainly not behind the times. So they went from not even making cell phones to coming into the smartphone industry and destroying it. Took BlackBerry's lunch and ate it in front of them. So we have to look at what were we taught in school? We were taught that if you don't evolve, you will become extinct. In business, you will go out of business. Your company will be bought out. You will file bankruptcy, right? So you've got 3 moves if you want to be successful, if you want your family to survive in this new economy. And the warning signs are everywhere, right? So you've got to adapt to the current environment. You've got to adapt. We can't continue to do the same things that you used to do, because unless it's working for you, you got to be willing to change, right? And this is adaptation, right? So older companies, people who are unwilling to change, you can't stop evolution. So it's going to happen. So you're either going to be a part of it and financially prosper and benefit, or you're going to get wiped out, period, point blank. So number one, you got to be willing to adapt. Number two, you got to be willing to adopt. I forget who it was. It's one of these painters from back in it was an artist from back in, like, I don't know, early times of civilization. Might have been Picasso or one of them. But the quote goes, great artists copy. Excuse me, good artists copy, great artists steal, right? And so ultimately, to me, I interpret that as you've got to be willing to adopt, not only adapt, but you've got to be willing to adopt what's working. And a lot of people have been, hitting me up. My contact information is in the description of the video down below. But a lot of people have been hitting me up saying, hey, man, me and my family, we're struggling. Not everyone's struggling. That's the other thing. Not everyone's struggling. But some people, they'll say, hey, I'm struggling. I need to figure out how to make an extra $100 a day. That's an extra $3,000 a month. I need to make an extra, couple hundred. I need to make an extra $500 a month. I need to make an extra $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 a month. Whatever the case is. Some people have completely lost their jobs, and they're getting backed up against the ropes, and they're struggling. They're needing a way out, right? So I'm getting all sorts of people hitting me up in my email and reaching out to me, different social media platforms, and the bottom line is there's ways to make this money. There's ways to make the money. There's ways to, to create passive income, active income streams, but you got to be willing to adapt. You got to be willing to adopt. And the third thing you got to be willing to do is you got to be willing to persist. That means that if it doesn't work on day one, you can't just roll up in the corner and cry. Like, your family depends on you. Your family depends on you. And we're aware of what the Fed Chair Jerome Powell is doing with interest rate hikes. We're aware that gas prices are continuously going higher. And it's a real interesting game that's going on right now with gas prices. I just can't see gas prices ever really going down to, sub $2 per gallon levels, especially if the administration is not willing to produce and increase refinery here in the United States. If we're not going to drill for more oil here in the United States, and we're continuously depending on other countries, as well as increasing refinery capacity, there's no new refineries. Gas prices have to keep going up unless there's a sudden increase in alternative fuels such as solar powered or electric vehicles, which would decrease the demand for petroleum or gas and diesel. So I guess the bottom line is what I'm saying here is we have to be willing to adapt. Families are going to have to adapt to the new circumstances. Families are going to have to evaluate, hey, is my job safe? Is my family safe? Some families are single income households. And you don't want to let yourself be in a situation where you get that notice, you get that Zoom call saying that your position is no longer needed. So you got to take action now. You have to prepare right now because the clock is ticking and we're running out of time. Sad thing is that, the Fed is addressing inflation. The Fed is raising interest rates, which is affecting mortgage rates, mortgage prices, housing prices. Rents are going up. Rents will continue to go up. Housing prices will continue to go up. If you look at the federal, I think the Federal Reserve has they have a database that shows real estate values over long periods of time. I looked at it. Over the last 100 years, there's only been like 2 points in time where real estate values have really declined to any substantial amount. And they were for very brief periods of time. So that tells me that real estate, regardless of what it does in the short term, in the long term, real estate is going to become more and more expensive. So if your income isn't increasing, then you and your family could potentially be wiped out. But there's ways around this, and it doesn't have to be that way. If you guys are interested in learning more about how to increase your income, how to make money even with very little money, if you're looking for ways of creating passive income for you and your family, definitely hit me up. Drop me some comments down below. Let me know if you guys got some value out of this video. Drop a like if you haven't already. If you made it this far in the video, consider subscribing to the channel and also share this video with someone who needs it. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Be safe.